Well, hey there. Welcome to the Pawpaw Chronicles and more with Jim. Well, here we are, the very end of the growing season. We're only a few days away from Halloween, and everything is starting to settle down and go dormant. Now, in the previous video, I had talked about root suckers that were coming off the stump of a tree and how that tree is doing. This is my own little personal pawpaw patch. I have different cultivars through here. Some of them, they still need time to continue to grow. Some of them, they're big enough. I'm really excited. We should be getting fruit from them. That being said, one of the things that I do want to talk to you about is root suckers. A lot of you know that I work with root suckers quite a bit. And I travel around and I check out different orchards to see how people's orchards are set up and take a look at their trees and the cultivars that they have. And something that I do want to share with you that I did see at one of the orchards I stopped at this year. I don't always share all the orchards that I go to, but there was one that I stopped at that I wanted to talk to you about. Let's throw a scenario out there to you. Now this one right here is a sunflower, and this one right here is an overleaf. Both are grafted trees. Well, let's throw a scenario out there that I can talk to you about. Let's say, for instance, that this was a seedling that produced very well fruit, and I had decided to give that seedling a name, and it just did well for me. And then as time went on, the tree got bigger and it started putting out root suckers around the perimeter of the tree. Now, all those root suckers around the perimeter of that particular seedling would be an exact clone to that seedling. Now, there's an advantage to that, but there's also a disadvantage to that. The advantage to that is because it would be a clone to this tree, I could harvest those root suckers and plant them elsewhere and continue to maintain this particular variety, if it was a variety. Seedling, that is. And I would end up having more than just the one tree as far as a seedling, because all of those would be identical to this tree. And I could even go around those root suckers and clip and utilize the root suckers themselves as scion wood. Done that before, and it works out great because it's an exact clone of that particular seedling slash variety. Now, of course, that's not going to happen with this right here because it's a grafted tree. But another thing that is a downfall to that, let's say that I don't maintain and allow root suckers to continue to grow. Root suckers will reach out long distances. They could go out 20 feet from that tree. It's a lateral root system. And as it goes out, the root sucker pops up, and the next thing you know it, what do you have? You have a clone. But you have root system out that way, and that clone is going to end up developing more root system under it because it wants that energy from the ground. And the next thing you know it, over a period of time, you end up with hundreds and hundreds of root suckers around that tree if you don't keep them in check. That big of a root system sitting out there would gather up all kinds of nutrients and stuff out of the ground, therefore robbing nutrients for the original tree. So if you have an orchard like this one right here, my advice would be is to keep the root suckers cleared out of here, because number one, I would not allow the root suckers to grow in here because these are all grafted trees. But if I had another area, which I will one day, of seedlings from node cultivars, and they turn out to be good seedlings. I may allow a few root suckers to grow just so I can harvest those root suckers. And that is what I would want to say, you know, don't let them get out of control, because what will happen is if they do get out of control, it's going to cause stress, and eventually it's going to cause problems for the original one. And that original one you could end up losing because everything was robbed out of soil and there's nothing there for the original one to live off of. The root suckers would begin to stress out. Your fruit would begin to ripen much earlier, because that was a scenario that I had saw earlier this year. The guy's fruit had ripened earlier than what it should have, and but he had another one off to the side that was a graft from that original, and they weren't ready to be harvested. And I looked at the entire area and you could see all the root suckers, and I thought to myself, stress. There's not enough nutrients in the ground to maintain what it was that he wanted out of that tree. But he ended up with an awful lot of root suckers around that tree, and for me personally, I would have loved to have been able to harvest a couple of those root suckers and just held on to them and planted them elsewhere. Then I could have said, this is the original of that particular cultivar, which at one time was a seedling and is a seedling. All cultivars at one time came from a seed. They were just grown out, turned out to be exceptional, and people started propagating off of that exceptional seedling, and this is how we ended up with a lot of grafted trees. I hope that's a good explanation to you as far as root suckers. I work with a lot of root suckers. I deal with the root sucker quite a bit. As a matter of fact, half of these trees at one time were root suckers that I had grafted over to known cultivars. I tend to get a faster growth out of the root suckers than I do out of the seedlings. For instance, Quaker's Delight, seedling, grafted over to a Quaker's Delight. And that was grafted in 2022. And it hasn't grown much at all. Very slow growing for me. The same way with Benny's Favorite over there. That was a seedling that was grafted, but root sucker there. I have a Davis over here that was a root sucker grafted, and it the same year, and it is 3 times the size of this tree by far. It's about 5 foot tall. Anyways, my name's Jim. If you like what you see, subscribe. Don't forget to click on that bell for any notifications. Any comments or questions that you may have, I welcome. You all have a God bless day.